Section: Introduction. In this section, we discuss the concept of the loss landscape of neural networks being non-convex. When we interpolate between the weights of two separately trained networks, we often encounter significant loss barriers, resulting in higher errors in the interpolated networks compared to the original ones. However, in some cases, such barriers do not exist. Empirically, stochastic gradient descent, SGD, tends to create training paths and attraction basins that resemble convex shapes. This means that there are low error barriers between certain global minima, and moving between points on the same training path leads to consistently decreasing errors. Our focus here is on linear connectivity, where the absence of significant loss barriers between networks indicates a certain flatness or convexity in the error landscape. While linear connectivity has been observed before in specific scenarios, recent studies suggest that all SGD solutions can be linearly connected through permutations. These permutations allow networks trained with the same data and SGD process to be smoothly interpolated with low barriers. However, it is still unclear from previous research which networks can be aligned by a specific permutation. There are two main claims. One suggests that a single permutation can connect all network pairs, while the other claims that a single permutation can only connect one pair of networks. Previous work has focused on the latter claim, known as weak linear connectivity, where individual network pairs can be aligned after training or at the start. In this study, we introduce a new concept called simultaneous weak linear connectivity, where a single permutation aligns matching network pairs along two sequences of transformed networks. We provide evidence for simultaneous connectivity in networks resulting from SGD training paths and iterative magnitude pruning. Additionally, we present support for strong connectivity by demonstrating that barriers among permuted network triplets decrease as network width increases. This leads us to believe that strong connectivity is achievable with wider networks. Our contributions include defining three versions of linear connectivity modulo permutation and clarifying existing evidence for weak linear connectivity. We show that a single permutation can align not only final trained networks but also partially trained networks with low error barriers. This alignment extends to all networks within the same linearly connected basin. We also demonstrate simultaneous weak connectivity between iteratively pruned networks, where the same permutation can align dense and sparse networks, allowing for consistent training accuracy. Furthermore, we provide initial evidence for strong linear connectivity by reducing barriers between independently trained networks through alignment with a third network. Section Summary. In this section, we delve into the non-convex nature of neural network loss landscapes, highlighting how linear interpolation between independently trained networks often encounters significant loss barriers. We explore the concept of linear connectivity, where certain regions of the loss landscape exhibit flatness or convexity, and discuss the idea of linear mode connectivity modulo permutation, which suggests that all networks trained with the same dataset and SGD procedure can be linearly interpolated with low barriers through specific permutations. Our work distinguishes between strong and weak linear connectivity modulo permutation, introducing an intermediary claim called simultaneous weak linear connectivity, which aligns pairs of networks along training trajectories or iterative pruning sequences, providing evidence for the existence of strong connectivity in wider networks. Section: Linear mode connectivity and loss barrier. In this section, we explore the concepts of linear mode connectivity and loss barrier. We define the loss barrier as the maximum increase in loss along a linear path between points A and B. Typically, barriers are maximized when alpha equals 0.5. Our experiments measure barriers using both cross-entropy and 0 to 1 classification error, with the latter referred to as error barriers. Two trained networks are considered linearly connected if the error barrier between them is below a certain threshold, usually set to the expected Monte Carlo noise of the empirical loss estimator. We informally say that networks are essentially linearly connected if the error barrier decreases significantly after applying a permutation, indicating that the loss basin of the network is determined with only a small error margin. We also investigate sparsity and iterative magnitude pruning. We study sparse subnetworks obtained through an iterative magnitude pruning (IMP) procedure, aiming to find winning tickets, as proposed in the lottery ticket hypothesis. IMP has been successful in identifying significantly sparse networks, termed winning tickets, which maintain the same accuracy as their dense counterparts. These sparse networks pruned for L iterations of IMP are also linearly connected to the next iteration L+1, provided that both networks match. Furthermore, we discuss aligning networks via permutation. The neurons in a neural network can be relabeled without altering its output. We define a fully connected feed-forward network with input x_0, layers I from 1 to k, weights w_I, biases b_I, and activation function sigma. The intermediate vectors, bfx_I, can be permuted using permutation matrices, bfp_I. To determine the linear connectivity of neural networks modulo permutation, we aim to align networks by finding a permutation that maximizes the similarity function, which measures the similarity between two networks. We simplify this problem by defining the similarity function using weight matching and activation matching heuristics from prior works. Moreover, we delve into linear mode connectivity and sparsity. This concept originated from investigations into the conditions required to obtain sparse IMP subnetworks, winning tickets, as proposed in the lottery ticket hypothesis. Linear mode connectivity characterizes stability based on the loss barrier between independent child networks derived from the same parent state. Our experiments involve spawning child networks from a parent at a specific time to isolate the impact of SGD noise. We observe that child networks spawned before a certain training point exhibit large error barriers for networks larger than MNIST scale. Our experiments further analyze the contributions of initialization and mini-batches on feature emergence, showing that entire SGD trajectories can be aligned to achieve small barriers. The idea of pre-training in the context of lottery tickets has gained significant attention, with winning ticket masks encoding information about the final linearly connected basin, indicating their dependency on symmetry. Section Summary. In this section, we explore the concept of linear mode connectivity and loss barrier. We define the loss barrier as the maximum loss increase along a linear path between 2 points, typically maximized at alpha equals 0.5, and measure it in terms of cross-entropy and classification error. Additionally, we investigate sparsity and iterative magnitude pruning to identify sparse subnetworks known as winning tickets, and align networks through permutation to minimize error barriers. Section. Linear mode connectivity modulo permutation. In this section, we explore the concept of linear mode connectivity modulo permutation. The symmetries caused by permutations in neural networks lead to multiple copies of global minima in the loss landscape. For networks with more parameters than needed, these permutation-induced minima are connected by a non-convex, piecewise linear structure. We ponder whether different minima found by stochastic gradient descent, SGD, are essentially just permutations of the same global minimum. By observing linear mode connectivity in identically initialized networks, we proposed a conjecture suggesting that independently initialized SGD solutions have no error barrier when considering the symmetries from permutation invariance. Initial evidence for this conjecture examined how a single SGD solution transforms under permutations. The permuted versions of a network were observed to fall into distinct linearly connected basins, with loss barriers similar to those between independently initialized and trained networks. Following this conjecture, various algorithms have been developed to directly address permutation invariance by aligning networks and maximizing their similarity. These algorithms have successfully identified permutations that significantly reduce or eliminate the loss barrier between two SGD solutions. One early method for finding permutations involved aligning neurons based on correlation or mutual information of activations, revealing that most representations between aligned networks were equivalent. Another approach used activation matching to uncover mode connectivity, where networks are linked by nonlinear paths of low loss after permutation. Subsequently, An optimal transport method was introduced to align network weights or activations. These methods aim to find permutations that enhance similarity between networks with the same architecture or slight differences. They have practical applications such as matching local and global models for federated learning, merging models trained on different datasets, and compressing models by combining layers. The notion of linear connectivity modulo permutation, LC-mod-P, occurs when network parametrizations can be permuted without hindering linear interpolation between any two permuted elements. We distinguish between weak and strong interpretations of LC-mod-P, where the strong version requires a single permutation to linearly connect all pairs of networks within a given class. Empirical evidence supports the weak version of LC-mod-P for wide, two-layer networks at initialization with high probability. However, there is limited empirical support for the strong version, especially for standard network configurations. We also introduce the concept of simultaneous weak linear connectivity modulo permutation, which highlights the possibility of finding a single permutation that linearly connects two sequences of networks obtained through SGD. Our empirical findings demonstrate that sequences of networks obtained through SGD and iteratively sparsified networks exhibit simultaneous weak linear connectivity modulo permutation. This concept opens up possibilities for applications in federated learning and model fusion. Section Summary. In this section, we explore the concept of linear mode connectivity modulo permutation in neural networks. We investigate how permutation symmetries create copies of global minima in the loss landscape, and how distinct minima found by stochastic gradient descent, SGD, may actually be permutations of the same global minimum. By aligning networks and maximizing their similarity through various algorithms, we can reduce or eliminate the loss barrier between different SGD solutions, enabling applications like federated learning, model merging, and model compression. Section: Empirical Findings. In this section, we will discuss our empirical findings on simultaneous weak linear connectivity modulo permutation, simultaneous WLC-mod-P. Our results are not influenced by any specific algorithms. We aim to show different aspects of LC-mod-P by finding a permutation that reduces the error barrier between two networks. The existence of such a permutation is independent of the method used to find it. If we cannot find a permutation that connects two networks linearly modulo permutation, it does not mean that such a permutation does not exist. In our study, we do not interpret the inability to find a permutation as evidence for or against linear connectivity. We conducted experiments using VGG16 with layer normalization trained on CIFAR10. Additional results with various datasets and model architectures are presented in other sections. We observed that training trajectories exhibit simultaneous weak linear connectivity modulo permutation. By matching weights or activations after training, we found that the error barrier between independent SGD iterates significantly decreases over time. This indicates that the two networks remain linearly connected modulo permutation throughout the training process. Furthermore, we discovered that a single permutation connecting two SGD solutions after training can also connect other networks within the same linearly connected modes. This suggests that networks sharing the same linearly connected modes exhibit similar behaviors throughout their training trajectories. Additionally, we explored the simultaneous weak LC-mod-P of iteratively sparsified networks. We found that a permutation connecting independent dense networks also connects sequences of sparse networks obtained from the same dense networks via IMP. Our results show that sparse subnetworks are essentially linearly connected to their dense counterparts, even with different initializations, under certain permutations. Section Summary. In this section, we present our empirical findings on simultaneous weak linear connectivity modulo permutation, simultaneous WLC-mod-P. Our results show that the existence of a permutation that eliminates the error barrier between two networks does not depend on the method used to find it. We demonstrate that networks trained independently through SGD remain essentially linearly connected throughout training, even when considering sequences of increasingly sparse networks obtained through iterative magnitude pruning, IMP. Section: Masks can be transported modulo permutation. In this section, we explore the possibility of transporting IMP masks between different networks through permutation. We found that transferring an IMP mask from one network to another can improve performance compared to one-shot pruning up to a certain level of sparsity. To do this, we iteratively prune the smallest weights of each network and align them through permutation. By applying the sparsity masks to the aligned networks and retraining them, we observed that IMP masks can be successfully transported between networks while maintaining high accuracy. Our experiments demonstrate that IMP masks from one network can be effectively applied to another network through permutation, achieving matching accuracy for sparsity levels up to a certain threshold. This method outperforms one-shot pruning and allows for higher sparsity levels while preserving accuracy. However, attempting to apply the masks without permutation results in lower accuracy across all sparsity levels. Furthermore, we investigated the linear connectivity between networks trained using SGD. By aligning multiple networks with a reference network and analyzing the barriers between them, we observed that strong linear connectivity modulo permutation is feasible for networks with increased width. However, indirect alignment still results in higher barriers compared to direct alignment, indicating limitations in weight and activation matching algorithms. Our findings suggest that activation matching is generally more effective than weight matching, although neither method is consistently superior. Weight matching performs well for wide networks at convergence but struggles with sparse networks or those not trained to completion. These observations highlight the importance of algorithmic aspects in network alignment and the discovery of strong linear connectivity modulo permutation in broader network settings. Section Summary. In this section, we explore the possibility of transporting IMP masks between different networks via permutation. We find that IMP masks from one network can be effectively applied to another network through permutation, achieving matching accuracy up to certain sparsity levels, outperforming one-shot pruning. Our results suggest that networks within the same linearly connected mode modulo permutation exhibit similar structures, allowing masks to achieve near state-of-the-art performance when applied to independently trained models with appropriate permutations. Section: Weight matching depends on large magnitude weights. In this section, we explore how weight matching is influenced by the magnitude of weights. We conducted experiments and found that weight matching is not affected when pruning weights with the smallest magnitude but performs poorly when weights are randomly pruned. By aligning a subset of layers based on their weight values from earlier training stages, weight matching can bring lower layers into alignment earlier during training. When we apply this partial alignment in a bottom-up manner, we observe that the lowest layers align sooner than the higher layers. It is important to note that network stability at initialization is not a requirement for permutation alignment. We define network stability concerning SGD noise and show through interventions that linear connectivity modulo permutation does not necessarily need network stability, and vice versa.